I'll give you a small example about this likelihood ratio, odds ratio, etc. See, I was working in Saudi Arabia. There was an American surgeon. So this patient comes to him and says, he says you need appendicectomy. Patient is happy, very good. And he says, what is the complication rate, patient? American says, he gets very irritated. He says 1%. So patient is happy, oh great. How many have you done till today, appendicectomy? He said 99. Surgeon says. Patient says, how many complications have you had? He says none. You are the 100th patient and there is 1% complication. The patient has to decide to get operated or not. So that is your answer for all these explanations, because none of them can be true for a given patient. None of them. So if you read the stock market, the past performance is no indication of the future growth. That's what you have to remember when you do the clinical work. Yeah. Shall I start?
Yes, you can start, but for the sake of web, because we are on the web, so we just want to change in the program where Dr. Santan will speak on incorporation research in clinical implications.
All right. You have been hearing so much about research and so much about paper writing, this, that and all. So, but we are trained to ask questions. You see, in our philosophy it says, question everything. But what our forefathers forgot to mention is question correctly everything which is doubtful. So if you go to the cliff, end of the cliff, and the fellow says, don't jump, the fellow says, why should I not jump? He will ask. I'll say, forget it, jump, I don't mind if you jump off the cliff. You understand? Questioning should be careful and it should be measured questioning, not irrelevant questioning. Okay? Now, why a research at all? Many of you may think that is a relevant question, but then without a proper and well-conducted research and relevant results, we would all been using castor oil for cataract and bloodletting for diabetes. Would we want that? Obviously, the answer is no. So that's why we need research. Now, before one can start conducting research in smaller places, please don't be under the impression smaller places cannot conduct good research. No, they can conduct excellent research because their confounding factors are less. You are likely to be more honest. So you can conduct, but then you need to know what is a useful and a meaningful research and how much is going to cost and how difficult it is going to be. So you need to form for that a research question in your mind. Yesterday somebody asked something about prickly sensation. Is the doctor here? He's not around. Okay, I'll tell you. He asked one question yesterday. I'll show you the implication of his questioning, how it can be taken and what happens later on. So this, I have not made it up before. I mean, if I had made it up before the meeting, I would have been a good predictor of his question, but I am not. So since I made it last night, after a glass of beer, things became very clear in my mind. So how do you conduct a research? What are the prerequisites for a research? This is for small places who are interested in making, and also for big places. How to record data and analyze them, and having done research, what do you do with them? Of course, publish them. Okay? Now, what do you need to conduct a research? You need money. See, money makes the world go round and round. Without money, nothing happens. Funds, maybe lots of it. You need clinical material or experimental material. You need them, correct? No doubt. You need time. You cannot do research as a hobby and a part-time job. You need lots of time. You cannot be a clinician and a researcher put together at the same time. It's very, very, very difficult. I'll tell you that much, that it's not very easy. You need helpers. to help you. Lot of things you need helpers. Without that, helpers means again money. Then you need critical thinking. Okay? So critical thinking doesn't come easily. For me, it definitely doesn't come easily unless I have a glass of beer at evening. It comes sharp. My wife thinks that it causes brain degeneration. Don't drink. I say it improves my thinking capabilities. So we have a difference of opinion. Somebody should take up a research project on that. Start the research with a case report. Yesterday I explained to you how a good, well-written case report is as good as a research paper. You remember yesterday's talk, then you will know. Keep repeating, practice makes a man perfect. So what are the prerequisites for conducting a research? Number one, you need to have knowledge. Without your knowledge, if you cannot identify lacunae in the knowledge, correct? Any difficulty in understanding, you need to know, first of all. Before you know what the other person does not know, you need to know yourself what you know, correct? So you need to understand. That is, knowledge is important for conducting a research. Then only you can identify the lacunae in the pre-existing knowledge. Number two, having identified the gap in the knowledge, what can you do to fill the gap? Correct? Very simple. 3. Remember, before you start any research, ethical committee approval is nowadays very essential. Okay? Without that, no one will accept your papers for publication. Ethical committee approval. When I say ethical committee approval, there is a problem. Imagine yourself, Lalluji and Suresh Kalmadiji as the heads of ethical committees. Wonderful. Okay? And then the Mount Singh as the mediator or moderator of the ethical committee. So it will be wonderful ethics for the country. But nevertheless, there are such ethical committees also. Okay, you find in Google all the ethical committees available in India, and you can pay them money, they will approve your paper, they will give you a number. That's called ethical committee number. Okay, so when you write the paper, someone said, ethical committee का approval मिल जाएगा, paper accept हो जाएगा, तो ethical committee approval मिल जाएगा, he said. So what do you mean? No, you accept my paper, I'll get the approval later. You understand his concept. So that doesn't work anymore nowadays. Even IGO is refusing to accept without ethical committee approval. Remember, even for retrospective studies, you need ethical committee approval or a waiver. Sudeep Shah will be here in the afternoon. He will tell you the difficulties with getting an approval for retrospective study and things like that. Okay? Write down in order what is the aim of the research. Till now you understood there is a gap in the knowledge. You want to fill the gap. So what is that gap and how you propose to fill? That will become the aim of your paper. Now I will give you an example and show you how your research question will alter your life. Now, simple question you ask. How often you encounter diabetic macular edema after an uncomplicated cataract extraction? You want to know the answer for this question. Okay? Many of you are not ophthalmologists, but you can take a simpler example. It's not very difficult to formulate a simpler example. Is that understood? You want to know the answer. What do? You need to know how often DME occurs in uncomplicated cataract extraction. What would you do? You would search the literature first. Correct? Any difficulty in understanding? Because you want to know approximately the idea about incidence. So you will search the literature. After having done this literature, what you do is, you know how to search the literature has already been taught to you. Correct? You can go to the internet, PubMed, Trip database, Embase, anywhere, and type in these words: diabetic macular edema, uncomplicated cataract extraction. Okay? Then how many patients to include in the study? You need to know. That is sampling. That also has been taught to you, how to sample the thing. Okay? diabetes macular edema can be identified by doing an OCT. You also know that from literature search. Now, you need to do OCT before operation, you need to do OCT after operation. And it costs. Okay? Supposing how many patients you have pre-op for evaluation for this, proving this, you have say 60 eyes. Okay? That means you need 60 eyes pre-op, 60 eyes post-op, OCT, and all these patients. See, simple question you have asked. See how difficult it becomes. You understand? So you need money for 60 OCTs pre-op. You need money for 60 OCTs post-op in both the eyes, not just one eye, because you need one comparison, one other eye. So you have 120 OCT events before op, 120 OCT events after the op. Put the money together and you make the OCTs. Plus save this data. You can't just leave it lying around. You have to save the data. Correct? So you have done the literature search, you have done that, you have saved the. Now, if I tell you this, your mind goes blank. Oh, what the heck? What's the point in doing all this research? It's so difficult to do it. Never mind. Researchers are persistent and cantankerous fellows. They will never give up. Okay? So you continue. So you collect the data like vision, OCT and time lapse, everything recorded. On where do you want to record? You need to record on a laptop. Correct? Nothing wrong. You can record it with your secretary, who is your laptop, or you can record on laptop, which is your laptop. Either way, you have to record the data. So you have 60 eyes of diabetic patients undergoing surgery, having OCT done 2 times at least for some money. In a place like this JJ hospital, it may not be a problem. Correct? No constraints for patients, no constraints for tests, money. But in a private practice, would it be possible? Answer is yes. You have money, you have will, yes, it is possible. But remember, there are no free lunches. The free lunch you get in IJO here is also for you to attentively listen to me, even if it is most boring. Remember, because you know that you will be asked questions at the end of it, so you will be awake. You get free lunch, but there is a price you pay for that. Now, somehow or the other, you get the funding and do the OCT, collect the data, etc., and you put them in a computer. Now you need to analyze this data that you have. Let's say 20% of the patients develop diabetic macular edema after an uncomplicated cataract extraction, and you need a sample size of 60 eyes that you have calculated. Then you have macular edema, but what have you done to the patient? You decide, okay, I will inject Avastin to see if Avastin works in these patients after the operation. Now, wait a minute. Your paper started as finding out diabetic macular edema after uncomplicated cataract extraction. Now you are introducing one more term. Can we club these 2 studies? Yes, but it costs you even more money because you have to give injection Avastin to all these patients, plus repeat all these things. Collection data, OCT, etc., before injection, after injection. You see how complicated it has become? We started as finding out a small topic, diabetic macular edema after uncomplicated cataract extraction. That's all. But it has become very complicated now. Your question was very simple. Okay? Now, even after you complete all this, what is this? It will be only a case series. That's all. It's not going to be a randomized controlled trial. It's not going to be multi-center trial. Nothing. One center case series. The editor of the paper will take one look at it and throw it out. Even if the results are good. Now you get disheartened. What the hell? There was no difference. It would have been worse. All the money that you have spent is down the drain. But if there is a difference, this paper cannot be published. So you are stuck. So where did we go wrong? Where did we go wrong? Did we go wrong at all? Or if we did not go wrong, why we did not? Or where did we go wrong at all? Can anyone take a guess and answer? Did we go wrong at all in the first place? Yes or no answer, simple. Huh? Yes, he says yes. Who thinks that we did not go wrong? Nobody thinks we did not go wrong? I think that we didn't go wrong at all. Perfect. He says yes. No. We did not go wrong to the extent that yes, our study was a valid study, but similar studies have been done before and they have given answers. So we went on looking for the same answers. In a way it is wrong, but then if there are differences with our study and their study, we can always publish that. No harm. So we did not go wrong to that extent. Second, our research question should have been framed differently if we did not want to have this much of expenses. You see how easy it is to twist around to reduce the cost of your research by altering your question. Okay? The incidence of macular edema, instead of incidence of macular edema after, before, etc., you can change it as only visual acuity assessment in diabetic patients after uncomplicated cataract extraction within 1 week after cataract operation, compared to non-diabetic patients. If you do that, it's very easy. There is no OCD involved. You see, but it gives you the same answer. But there is no OCD, so your cost comes down dramatically. So therefore, I say the framing of research question is the critical part of your research. You must know firsthand how much money do I have for this research. Do I have unlimited grant or I have a limited grant? Do I have unlimited money? I have a limited money. In a private practice, I do research. Not that I don't do research at all. But I ask questions, which one I would like to do, what I would like to do I have money? So framing of a research question is based on the monetary support you have for your practice. Okay, let's take the, how many more minutes I have? 15.
No. I have reduced it. Only 2 minutes. No, seriously, because yesterday Dr. What's his name? Dr.
JP.
Muleel said that I want to start his talk exactly at 10:30.
Okay, no, I started at 10, it is 14 minutes.
No, I know that. We are adjusted because
okay, I'll try and
you
finish.
didn't start your talk immediately after Rajul.
Okay.
You wasted 15 minutes.
Alright.
Or rather, we wasted.
Okay, prickly eyes. He asked a question.
No problem. How many?
No.
I'm going to cut down my talk.
Okay.
10:30 will be Dr. Muleel.
Yeah.
So, I think somebody should get Dr. Muleel here after some he's having breakfast.
Okay. Somebody said about prickly eyes. You remember yesterday he said, I have patients who complain of pricking sensation after cataract operation. What do I do? That was a simple research question he asked. Correct? Prickly eyes. Now I said, okay, that's a good question to ask. So first I said, define your prickly eyes. You write prickly eyes in PubMed, you don't get any answers. Nothing. Because your description should be foreign body sensation in the eye. So the first thing you should do is use correct keyword for your research. Mesh word, medical subject heading, keyword. Prickly eyes is not the correct word to use, but foreign body sensation in the eye is the correct word to use. You understand? So when you do that, you decide how many years of research you want to go back. 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 100 years. Because your research depends on how many years you want to go back. So you set a limit. 10 years, I just want to do for 10 years literature search, not more than that. You understand? Then you ask, what are the causes of prickly eyes? Search the literature. It says prickly eyes could be due to dry eyes, could be due to meibomian gland disease, could be due to sutures, could be due to epithelial toxicity, could be due to drugs, could be due to incisional disturbances, could be due to a combination of all. Now we have a problem. What do we do? Alright, I will persist. I will not leave it go. You need to do tests. Like you need to do Shermer's test, breakup time of tear film, Rose Bengal test, fluorescein staining before cataract operation, and you need to do after cataract operation all these tests in both the patients complaining of prickly eyes and patients not complaining of prickly eyes. After an uncomplicated operation, you need all these tests. Correct? Then only you can identify the cause. You don't know the cause. Okay, you have done that. Okay? You have done wonderful. You have done all these tests in both the group and you need to know how many patients I will take and do the test. Maybe 60, 100, 160. We don't know. We need some sampling and then we calculate. Now, you need to know if these patients complaining of foreign body sensation after cataract operation have more dry eyes than those without operation or before operation. If there is any difference at all in these two patients. All these tests you do. And you should know there should be a difference between those complaining of dry eyes and prickly sensation and those not complaining of prickly sensation. There should be a difference for the study to be useful and for the study to be positive and acceptable. If there is no difference, the money is down the drain. You have done a research, but the money has gone down the drain. It's a negative result. Now what do? You have lost all the money. Whatever money you have done from cataract is gone. Now but you are left with the same patient. Not everything, not every patient, not everything should undergo research to get an answer. There is what is called as, you build up a clinical acumen and you build up what is called as clinical judgment. And the research is, the first step in research is clinical acumen, clinical judgment. Correct? So what would I do? Well, what I do is ensure that there is no MGD, there is no blepharitis before cataract surgery, treat them properly for that a week before. Nowadays in Bangalore, it has become very difficult to wait for 1 week. I'm sure it's even more so in Bombay because in Bangalore there are surgeons who will remove cataract in aphakic and they will remove cataract in utero also. They don't wait that for long for cataract to form. Before formation they will remove. That kind of surgeons we have. So in such a situation, I tell them wait for 1 week. They say, what is wrong with this fellow? He says 1 week for cataract. But that is the way I do. Many patients I lose, many patients I come back. It doesn't matter to me. So I treat them all for 1 week. Antibiotic steroid drops. Steroid helps mydriasis. Antibiotic cures their problems. And after a week, I operate them. And to post-op regime, I add refreshed ears. Okay? Now I have taken care of all the problems that is likely to give rise to dry eyes and the patient is happy. I didn't need to do any research for after all, what do you do the research for? To improve the standard of care, to make the patient happier. I have already made the patient happy. Is there something wrong in this research? Nothing wrong, no? I have gone logically and I have gone methodically to say the patient should get better. So I have made the patient better. So symptom-free patient means a happy patient and so the treatment is probably correct. So clinical research can be done not just for publication only. It's a misconception you have that, I should do research only for publication. You do and then you get automatically published. You do the research to improve your own care to the patient. That is more important. Okay? Now, the way I offer the service to the patient alters by my own clinical. You look at your own thing which you have done. It improves the patient care. So should a small practitioner with limited resources do research at all? What would you say? Yes. 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 Next question. Are there any difficulties in doing the research in smaller places? Yes or no? And no answer, very yes or no also is difficult. Okay, yes. There are insurmountable problems. No. There are problems, but it can be overcome. Where there is a will, God will always show you a way. Okay, with that I stop. Now we have given all basics about how to go about forming a research question, how to carry on the design of the research, and what are the implications of the research in a smaller place to do research, and we will carry on from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Santan.